Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jeremy Young. I'm a senior biochemistry major from Riverside, California, and today I will be talking to you all about cancer disparities. So, the purpose of this town hall presentation is to explain cancer disparities and social determinants to community members in order to educate and share how to address disparities at the local and larger community levels. So, for a table of contents, I'll be talking to you all about cancer disparities, health disparities, what social determinants of health are. Next, I'll be talking to you all about prostate cancer, how it impacts vulnerable communities, provide a testimonial from a prostate cancer survivor, as well as give insight to educational interventions related to cancer disparities. So, what is cancer, you might ask? So, cancer is a term for a variety of diseases where the cells divide abnormally and they can spread to nearby tissues or other parts of the body. Normally, when our cells divide, they form new cells when necessary and then they grow old, or when they're damaged, they die. And there are also two main categories of cancer. So, one type of cancer is blood cancer, which is cancer of the blood cells, and this could be in the form of leukemia or lymphoma. And then we also have solid tumor cancers, and common solid tumors are breast cancer, prostate cancer, lung cancer, and also colorectal cancer. And a tumor is defined as a mass of tissue that forms when cells grow abnormally. Um, so tumors can either be benign, which is non-cancerous, and they can also be malignant, which is cancerous. And so benign tumors can grow very large, but they may not spread to other parts of the body, whereas malignant or cancerous tumors will spread to other parts of the body through the bloodstream or the lymphatic systems. So cancer is caused by changes to the genetic information of our cells, and these genetic changes can be inherited from our parents, or they can occur from environmental exposures that damage our DNA. And so to the right, I have a figure detailing how our DNA is contained within the nucleus of our cell. So as you can see, we have the cell, and then within the cell, we have all of the organelles and cellular compartments, but more specifically, we focus on the nucleus here that contains the DNA. And so DNA is packaged in the form of a chromosome. And when you unravel the chromosome, you can see that you have DNA wrapped around these proteins that are called histones. And so histones, the purpose of them is to, make DNA more tightly coiled. And so if you look further at the DNA as it's pulled out, you see that we have genes, which are made up of DNA, and also closer, we have the individual bases that make up our genes. So we have guanine, cytosine, adenine, and thymine. So these are the four DNA bases that make up our genetic makeup. So here is an example of normal skin cells when they're compared to cancerous skin cells. And so as you can see on the right, the cancerous cells have begun to migrate from the outermost layer of skin towards the dermis layer of skin, which is in the inner portion here. You can see for the normal cells, there's still a very, very healthy divide between the outer layer and the inner layer. And there's also not uncontrolled cell growth present. So here I also have a figure detailing cancer metastasis and how cancer can spread to other parts of the body via the bloodstream or the lymphatic system. So you can see how in this figure, this individual has primary cancer focused later in their intestines, and it could actually metastasize in the liver and also in the lungs. And so how this can occur is through cancer cells moving through the blood and forming a metastatic tumor, or the cancer can also be present in the lymph system, and that could also form a metastatic tumor. So here's just a visual detailing that process. So what are disparities? Although the term disparities is often interpreted to mean racial or ethnic disparities, there are many, many dimensions of disparities that exist within the United States. So if a health outcome is seen to a greater or lesser extent between populations, that is a disparity. And examples of disparities can be seen in the topics of gender, sexual identity and orientation, geographic location, disability status or special healthcare needs, or income, and many others. Health equity is defined as the attainment of the highest level of health for all people. And achieving health equity requires valuing everybody equally with focused and ongoing societal efforts to address avoidable inequalities, historical and contemporary injustices, and the elimination of health and healthcare disparities. So more specifically, we're going to dive into cancer disparities. And so, as we know, cancer affects all population groups within the United States. Unfortunately, due to social, environmental, and economic disadvantages, certain groups bear disproportionate burden of cancer compared to other groups. And so, the National Cancer Institute defines these cancer disparities as adverse differences in cancer measures such as the number of new cases, the number of deaths, cancer-related health complications, survivorship, and quality of life after cancer treatment. And so these differences in burden of cancer exist between racial and ethnic groups and socioeconomic groups, among others as well. And so examples of cancer disparities related to the African American community would be African Americans having higher death rates than all other racial or ethnic groups for many cancer types. African American women are also more likely to die of breast cancer than white women. The incidence rates of colorectal, lung, and cervical cancers are higher in rural areas than in urban areas. And most importantly, which is the focus of our presentation today, is that African American men are twice as likely than white men to die of prostate cancer, and they continue to have the highest prostate cancer mortality rate among US population groups. So here is a figure of chronic disease rates of white, Black or African American, Hispanic, American Indian, and Asian or Pacific Islander groups. And so as you can see on the right, we have the Black and African American group, and they have the highest death rates of all three chronic disease being diabetes, heart disease, and cancer, whereas the Asian and Pacific Islander group has the lowest death rate of all three of these chronic diseases. So you kind of, with this figure, you kind of just see a visual representation of these disparities related to cancer and maybe even just other health outcomes as well. So, what are social determinants of health? Social determinants of health are conditions in the places where people live, learn, work, and play that affect a wide range of health and quality of life risks and outcomes. The five key areas of social determinants outlined by Healthy People 2030 are health and healthcare, education, societal and community context, economic stability, neighborhood, and built environment. Social determinants of health also include two different types of determinants. So there we have social determinants and then we have physical determinants. And so below here are examples within these five key areas that were outlined in the previous slide. So with economic stability, we have employment, food insecurity, housing instability, and poverty. For education, we have early childhood education and development, enrollment in higher education, high school graduation, and language and literacy. For social and community context, we have civic participation, discrimination, incarceration, social cohesion. For health and healthcare, we have access to healthcare, access to primary care, and health literacy. And then we have neighborhood and built environment, which includes access to foods that support healthy eating, crime and violence, environmental conditions, and quality housing. So here we have examples of social and physical determinants. Social determinants being resource availability, access to opportunities, transportation, public safety, so social norms, residential segregation also includes language and literacy, and also access to mass media and technology. Whereas physical determinants are including the natural environment, built environment, recreational and school settings, housing, exposure to harmful substances, and also physical barriers. So for this presentation, we're going to be focusing more on prostate cancer. And so what is prostate cancer, you might ask? So prostate cancer begins when cells in the prostate gland start to grow out of control, which is typical of cancer. And the prostate is a small walnut-shaped gland in males that's located below the bladder and in front of the rectum. Symptoms of prostate cancer include trouble urinating, decreased force in the stream of urine, blood in the urine and in the semen, bone pain, loss of weight, and erectile dysfunction. Risk factors for prostate cancer include age, race, family history, obesity, and many others. And so on the right, we have a diagram of the male reproductive system. So we have the bladder, as you can see, and then beneath the bladder, we have the prostate gland, and you can kind of see that there's a cancerous tumor there on the right. So how does prostate cancer impact communities? So, about 1 in 8 African American men will be diagnosed with prostate cancer during their lifetime. The incidence rate of prostate cancer for African American men is around 180 per 100,000 of a population, which is a very, very high amount. The 5 year survival rate for African American men, thankfully, is 97%. And the American Cancer Society estimates for prostate cancer in the US for the year 2021 are about 248,530 new cases of prostate cancer and 34,130 deaths from prostate cancer. So here, I did get the pleasure of interviewing a 67-year-old man who was a prostate cancer survivor. He was diagnosed with prostate cancer at age 63, and he is of African American descent. And so I had asked him if he had proper access to care during his, initial diagnosis, and he explained that his first physician did not give him critical information about his health and related to his prostate, and so he was not made aware of this information that he, needed surgery for prostate cancer until he switched to his second physician about 3 or 4 years later. And related to this, he also expressed that his first physician demonstrated a clear lack of sensitivity to his needs. And so this experience contributed to his disillusionment with his primary care physician. And it's the main reason why his efforts to find another physician were prolonged. When asked if he knew about social determinants, he explained that he was made aware after his surgery to remove his prostate cancer, but he was still amazed at how health outcomes are connected to our personal experiences, and that he recognized that without this knowledge, the effects can be detrimental to our health. I believe that this interview shed a lot of light on how necessary it is for the community to be informed about what contributes to their health outcomes and for individuals to be their own advocate and take steps to ensure that they have access to quality care. And access to quality care is one of the 5 key social determinants that were outlined by Healthy People 2030. So, what educational interventions can be made in relation to prostate cancer, cancer disparities, and health disparities in general? One intervention could be enhancing knowledge and skills of the community and other volunteer groups, supporting health disparities and health equity research, partnership with community leaders and organizational partners, exploring how programs and policies affect the health of individuals and their communities. Also, we can establish common goals and constructive relationships with these community partners. And also, we should maximize opportunities for collaboration. So, here are my references. Thank you for listening. I hope that the purpose of my presentation was achieved and that you were educated on cancer disparities, social determinants of health, and how to better advocate for your community and your community at large. Thank you.